The conference room at Meridian Tower overlooked the city's financial district, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a view I'd admired countless times from the other side. Today, I sat across from Eleanor Thompson, her silver hair catching the afternoon light as she spread partnership documents across the polished mahogany table. "Your reputation precedes you, Stephanie," Eleanor said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Thompson Consulting has been tracking Wilson Strategic's growth for years. Your strategic alignment methodology alone could revolutionize how we approach healthcare marketing." I nodded, trying to focus on her words, but my mind kept drifting to the business cards in my purse offers from 3 major firms, all promising executive positions with equity stakes. After 10 years of building someone else's dream, these opportunities felt surreal. "The partnership structure I'm proposing gives you 40% equity immediately," Eleanor continued, "with the option to buy up to 51% within 3 years. You'd be—" My phone buzzed against the table. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call and offered Eleanor an apologetic smile. "Sorry, family call." "You were saying about the client transition plan." The phone rang again, then again. "Perhaps you should take that," Eleanor suggested gently. "We can continue this after." Against my better judgment, I answered, "Hello, Dad." "Stephanie." His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "You need to come back. Right now, the company. We might lose everything." The room seemed to tilt. Through the window, I could see Wilson Strategic's building 12 blocks away, the place I'd called home for a decade before walking out 2 weeks ago. "What do you mean, lose everything? Reynolds is gone. Completely. And there's more. Much worse. Please, just come." The line went dead. Eleanor was studying my face with the sharp attention of someone who'd built a business reading people's reactions. "I'm sorry," I said, gathering my things. "There's an emergency at my former company." "The family business." Eleanor's expression softened. "Take your time. This offer isn't going anywhere." As I drove through downtown traffic, memories crashed over me like waves. 2 weeks ago, I'd sat in my parents' living room listening to Dad announce that Lauren, my younger sister, who'd never worked a day at Wilson Strategic, would inherit 100% ownership of the company I'd helped build into a $15 million enterprise. "Lauren has shown great interest in continuing the family legacy," he'd said, as if occasional office visits during unemployment spells constituted career dedication. With her fresh perspective and Thomas's business background, we believe they'll take the company in exciting new directions. Thomas Bradford, Lauren's fiancé, came from old money and newer ambitions. I could see the appeal for my traditionally minded parents, a son-in-law who could provide financial stability and carry forward the family name. The memory still stung. 10 years of 60-hour weeks, postponed vacations, relationships sacrificed on the altar of company growth, all dismissed as just doing your job. Meanwhile, Lauren's engagement ring somehow qualified her to run a strategic marketing firm. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin Reynolds, CEO of our former largest client. "If you ever return to Wilson, call me immediately. What happened today cannot stand." A chill ran down my spine. Martin Reynolds was legendary for his composure. In 15 years of partnership, I'd never seen him truly angry. Whatever Lauren had done must have been catastrophic. More texts followed from Thomas Grant, my former marketing director, Sarah Jensen, our senior account executive, even Marcus Chin from the creative team. All variations of the same theme: chaos, confusion, and barely concealed panic. I pulled into Wilson Strategic's parking lot, staring up at the glass building where I'd spent a decade building my reputation. The irony wasn't lost on me 2 weeks ago. I'd been an employee. Today, I might be their only salvation. Inside the lobby, the receptionist's eyes widened. "Miss, Wilson, I didn't know you were... Emergency meeting, I said, heading for the elevator. Is my father in his office? The elevator ride to the third floor felt eternal. Through the glass walls, I could see my team hunched over computers with the grim determination of people fighting a losing battle. Several looked up as I passed, their faces mixing relief with something that looked like hope. Dad's office door was closed, but I could hear raised voices inside. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Dad sat behind his desk, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Mom perched on the edge of a chair, tissues crumpled in her hands. Lauren stood by the window, her back to the room, shoulders shaking. "Stephanie," Dad breathed, rising from his chair. "Thank God you came." "Tell me what happened," I said, keeping my voice level. "All of it." Lauren turned around, her face streaked with tears. For the first time since childhood, my successful, confident little sister looked utterly lost. "I destroyed everything," she whispered, "and I don't know how to fix it." The next hour unfolded like a masterclass in corporate destruction. Dad started from the beginning, his voice heavy with regret. Wilson Strategic Marketing had been his life's work, founded in 1992 when I was 4 years old. What began as a one-man operation in our basement had grown into a regional powerhouse with 38 employees and a client roster that read like a who's who of regional business. "I built this company for family," Dad said, gesturing at framed photos spanning 25 years of growth. "Your mother and I always dreamed of passing it down, creating a legacy that would last generations." The irony was that I'd absorbed this dream more completely than anyone else in the family. While other kids collected Pokemon cards, I collected marketing award certificates that Dad brought home. During high school, I'd spent summers filing papers and answering phones, absorbing industry knowledge like a sponge. Northwestern University's business program had been my obvious choice, followed by an MBA specializing in digital marketing strategies. Every academic decision was made with Wilson Strategic in mind, my future. I'd thought Lauren had taken a different path entirely. 4 years younger, she'd pursued comparative literature at a small liberal arts college, spending summers backpacking through Europe or interning at art galleries. During family dinners, she'd roll her eyes when conversation turned to business, calling it boring shop talk. I never resented her choices, I said, looking at Lauren's tear-stained face. We had different passions. I just never imagined those differences would become weapons against me. Lauren flinched at my words but didn't argue. Mom reached for her hand. "Lauren felt pressure to match your success," Mom said quietly. She struggled to find her place in a family so focused on business achievement. It was true that Lauren had cycled through careers teaching, gallery administration, freelance writing, and most recently, social media consulting for local boutiques. But I'd viewed this as exploration, not failure. When Thomas proposed, Lauren spoke up, her voice barely audible. Mom and Dad started talking about the company differently, about family legacy and traditional values. I felt like I was finally being seen as capable of something important. The pieces clicked into place. Thomas Bradford came from a prominent local family with extensive business connections. His father owned commercial real estate throughout the region. For my parents, raised in an era when family businesses passed to sons or daughters who married well, Lauren's engagement had transformed her from the artistic daughter into the potential heir. "You never asked what I wanted," Lauren continued, tears flowing freely now. "You just assumed I'd be grateful for the opportunity, but I was terrified. I knew I wasn't qualified, but you all seemed so certain." I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. While I'd been fighting for recognition of my contributions, Lauren had been thrust into a role she'd never wanted and wasn't prepared for. "Tell me about your 10 years here, Stephanie," Dad said, seeming to need the reminder as much as I did. "I started as a junior account coordinator. earning $38,000 annually, the same as any new hire with similar qualifications. No nepotism, no special treatment. I'd shared a cramped office with 2 other junior staff members and earned every promotion through measurable results. Account coordinator to account manager in 3 years, manager to director of client services by year 5. Finally, chief strategy officer at 30, overseeing all major client relationships and strategic direction. Under my leadership, we'd shifted focus to high-end B2B clients, developing specialized approaches for industries requiring technical expertise. The crown jewel was Reynolds Enterprises, a commercial real estate development firm that had grown from a small project into an $8 million annual contract, over half our company's revenue. Martin Reynolds called me his marketing therapist, I said with a bitter laugh. That relationship took 8 years to build. He trusted me with expansion plans worth hundreds of millions in development projects. My signature achievement was the strategic alignment process, a methodology I developed during my MBA research and refined through years of client work. This proprietary approach helped clients align marketing efforts with core business objectives in measurable ways. It had transformed Wilson Strategic from a respectable local agency into a regional powerhouse, growing annual revenue from $3 million to $15 million. I poured everything into this company, I continued, my voice gaining strength. 60-hour weeks, postponed vacations, relationships that ended because I was always working. When Reynolds landed their international expansion campaign that tripled our contract value, I was the one who pitched it. When Bradshaw Industries needed crisis communication after their safety incident, I managed that personally. When Clearwater Solutions wanted to rebrand their entire corporate identity, I led that transformation. Throughout those years, Lauren had occasionally shown interest in the business, especially after it became successful. She'd drop by the office between jobs, asking casual questions about our work while I continued managing actual client deliverables. I noticed the pattern, I said, looking at my parents. How you lit up when Lauren visited, explaining everything to her like she was the heir apparent. But I dismissed it as harmless family dynamics. What I'd failed to recognize was how their traditional values extended to outdated notions about family hierarchy. Despite changing times, they'd held on to beliefs about family businesses ultimately passing to daughters, who might marry and continue the family name. We thought Lauren's engagement to Thomas created stability, Mom admitted, someone to help guide the business into the future, while I remained single, focused on my career, I said, understanding finally dawning. In your minds, that made me less suitable for inheritance, not more. The room fell silent as the truth settled over us like dust after an explosion. That night, I continued, when you announced Lauren would receive 100% ownership, it wasn't just a business decision. It was a judgment about my life choices, my priorities, my worth as a daughter. We were wrong, Dad said quietly, completely, catastrophically wrong. But by then, it was too late for second thoughts, Lauren said, her voice hollow. The announcement was made. I was terrified, but everyone seemed so certain it was the right choice. Thomas started talking about expansion plans, IPO possibilities, bringing in outside investors. I felt like I was drowning, but I couldn't admit that without disappointing everyone. I looked at my sister with new eyes, seeing past my own hurt to recognize her genuine distress. She hadn't schemed for this inheritance. She'd been pushed into it by well-meaning parents who'd confused marriage potential with business capability. So when I walked out, I said slowly, you were left alone with a company you didn't understand and expectations you couldn't meet. Lauren nodded miserably. I tried to fake it. I thought if I changed enough things quickly enough, I could prove I belonged there. Instead, I just broke everything you'd built. The foundation of my anger began to shift. This wasn't malicious sabotage. It was incompetence born of desperation and misplaced family expectations. "Tell me about Reynolds," I said gently. "What exactly happened?" Lauren's face crumpled. "It was supposed to be routine, a quarterly review meeting. Martin asked about you, and I said the company was moving in exciting new directions that didn't include outdated strategies." I winced. Martin Reynolds valued stability and proven methodologies above all else. Calling established processes outdated would have been like insulting his business intelligence directly. Then I presented this new campaign concept I'd been working on: intuitive engagement dynamics. I called it. When he asked for data backing, I said intuitive marketing was the future and dismissed his concerns. "Oh, Lauren," I breathed. He stood up, thanked me for my time, and said they wouldn't be renewing their contract. $8 million, gone. But he left his card and said, and she looked at me with desperate hope. He said if you ever returned, I should have you call him. The family dinner that had changed everything took place on a Sunday evening 3 weeks ago, though it felt like a lifetime. Mom had invited us for her famous pot roast, and Dad had opened expensive wine signs I should have recognized as marking a special occasion. Lauren had arrived with Thomas, both carrying an unusual energy I'd mistaken for engagement excitement. The exchanged glances, Mom's nervous laughter, Dad's ceremonial tone, all the signs had been there, but I'd been blind to them. "After careful consideration," Dad had said, swirling his brandy snifter, "Patricia and I have decided the best path forward is to transfer full ownership of Wilson's strategic marketing to Lauren." The words had hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Lauren, who had never worked a day at the company, was being given 100% ownership of the business I'd helped build for a decade. Lauren has shown great interest in continuing the family legacy. Dad had continued as I sat frozen. With her fresh perspective and Thomas's business background, we believe they'll take the company in exciting new directions. Fresh perspective. The phrase still burned. Lauren's fresh perspective had been formed by occasional office visits and casual conversations, while my perspective had been earned through years of strategic planning, client relationship building, and industry expertise. Lauren had beamed, seemingly oblivious to my shock. "I've got so many ideas for refreshing the company image," she'd gushed. "The current branding is getting a bit stale, and I think we need to pivot toward more lifestyle-oriented clients." The stale branding she'd referred to was a comprehensive identity system I'd developed 2 years earlier that had won 3 industry awards. The irony was lost on everyone except me. "Of course, Stephanie," Dad had added, as if offering a generous concession, "we want you to continue in your role. Your experience is valuable, and you can help mentor Lauren as she learns the business." Mentor my sister. As my new boss, my sister who couldn't distinguish between a marketing plan and a media kit. After dinner, I'd requested a private conversation with my parents in Dad's home office, walls adorned with company awards my work had earned. Why? I'd asked simply, "Honey, you're already so successful," Mom had said soothingly. "Lauren needs this opportunity to grow. You've always been the capable one." "I'm capable because I've worked incredibly hard," I'd responded, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I've dedicated my entire adult life to growing this company." Dad had leaned back in his chair. "And we appreciate that. Stephanie, you've done an excellent job. But that was your job, what we paid you to do. Lauren needs this chance to establish herself." How the words had hit like a physical slap. 10 years of sacrifice, reduced to just doing your job. Meanwhile, Lauren was being rewarded for what, needing an opportunity, I'd tried reasoning about business implications. Reynolds Enterprises works with us specifically because of the relationship I've built with Martin. Most of our major clients deal directly with me. Clients work with the company, not individuals. Dad had dismissed with a wave. "They'll adjust." That's when I'd understood. This wasn't a business decision. It was a familial one that revealed how they truly viewed my contributions. I was the reliable workhorse, expected to continue laboring while my sister enjoyed the fruits of my work. Looking back at Lauren now, tears streaming down her face, I felt the complexity of the situation settling in my chest like lead. "I didn't want it," Lauren said quietly. "I kept telling Mom and Dad I wasn't ready, that you deserved it more. But they said family legacy required sacrifice, that you'd understand because you loved the company so much." "They told you I'd understand," I asked, incredulous. "They said you'd be happy to see me grow into a leadership role, that mentoring me would be fulfilling for you." Lauren wiped her eyes. "I knew it was wrong, but Thomas kept saying it was a tremendous opportunity, that I'd be crazy to turn it down. His father talked about investment possibilities, expansion plans." The picture became clearer. Thomas and his family had seen dollar signs a successful business falling into their laps through marriage. They'd encouraged Lauren to accept what she'd instinctively known was undeserved. "When you walked out the next day," Lauren continued, "I panicked. Thomas said not to worry, that you'd cool off and come back once you realized the family needed you. His father suggested hiring consultants to bridge the gap until you returned, but I didn't come back. No. And suddenly I was alone with 38 employees looking to me for leadership I couldn't provide. The first week was a nightmare. Every meeting, every decision, every client interaction, I was drowning. I thought about my final day at Wilson Strategic, clearing out my office while Lauren directed interior decorators to erase my presence. It had seemed callous then, but now I wondered if it had been panic-driven overcompensation. The staff could see I didn't know what I was doing, Lauren admitted. Thomas Grant tried to help, but I felt so insecure that I interpreted his guidance as condescension. I started making changes just to prove I was in charge. Like the casual creative culture mandate. Lauren nodded miserably. Flexible hours based on inspiration rather than rigid schedules. It sounded progressive, but I didn't understand that B2B clients expect consistent availability and structured delivery timelines. The dominoes had begun falling immediately. When Lauren canceled monthly strategy meetings in favor of creative jam sessions, the development team grew frustrated with constantly shifting priorities. Long-term client relationships suffered as Lauren attempted to implement wholesale changes without understanding their foundation. "Everyone was walking on eggshells," Lauren said. "The harder I tried to prove myself, the more obvious it became that I didn't belong there. By the time the Reynolds meeting approached, I was desperate to show I could handle something significant on my own." "So you decided to completely overhaul their campaign strategy. I thought if I could present something revolutionary, something that proved the company was evolving under my leadership." Lauren's voice trailed off. "Instead, I insulted 15 years of relationship building and partnership." The meeting had been a disaster from start to finish. Martin Reynolds, expecting the strategic depth and data-driven approach he'd grown accustomed to, instead encountered Lauren's intuitive engagement dynamics, a concept she'd cobbled together from lifestyle marketing blogs. When he asked for case studies and metrics, Lauren continued, I couldn't provide any. So I made it worse by suggesting that Reynolds Enterprises' current approach was behind the times, that their brand needed a youthful refresh. For a commercial real estate development firm focused on industrial properties and medical facilities, this suggestion would have been particularly insulting. Martin's expression. Lauren shuddered. I've never seen anyone look so disappointed. He stood up, thanked me for my time, and said they wouldn't be renewing. Then he handed me his card and said if you ever returned, I should have you call him. $8 million. Gone. Over half the company's annual revenue. Eliminated in a single disastrous meeting. What happened after he left? I had a complete meltdown, Lauren admitted. I blamed everyone, the account team, for not preparing me, the creative department for stale concepts, even reception for not creating a welcoming environment. Everyone except myself. The aftermath had been swift and merciless. Within days, other clients had requested meetings to discuss the direction of their accounts, corporate speak, for reconsidering their relationships. Staff members started updating resumes, sensing the company's instability. That's when Dad finally understood what we'd done, Lauren said. Not just to you, but to the company, to everyone who depended on it for their livelihoods. The full scope of the crisis didn't become clear until later that afternoon, when Thomas Grant arrived at Dad's office looking haggard. As my former marketing director and closest professional ally, Thomas had always been brutally honest about business realities. "It's worse than just Reynolds," he said without preamble, settling into a chair across from Dad's desk. "Much worse." Lauren's face paled further, if that was possible. "What do you mean?" Thomas pulled out his laptop and opened a legal document. This morning, Apex Marketing filed a lawsuit against Wilson Strategic for intellectual property theft and breach of confidentiality. They're seeking $5 million in damages. The room went silent except for the hum of Dad's old desk fan. "That's impossible," I said, though my stomach was already dropping. "We've never worked with Apex. They're our biggest competitor." "No, but Andrew Michaels has," Thomas replied grimly. "He gave notice yesterday and starts at Apex on Monday. According to their filing, he's provided evidence that Wilson Strategic stole proprietary methodologies for the Henderson Industries campaign. Andrew Michaels, our creative director for the past 3 years. The Henderson campaign had been one of our most successful projects last year, a comprehensive rebranding effort that had won 2 regional advertising awards. "That's absurd," Dad said, his voice shaking. "Andrew worked on that campaign. He can't claim we stole his own work." Thomas shook his head. The lawsuit alleges that the strategic framework and creative concepts were originally developed by Andrew for a freelance project before he joined Wilson Strategic. They claim he brought the ideas to us under false pretenses, and that we've been implementing stolen intellectual property. I felt the blood drain from my face. The Henderson campaign had been built around a modified version of my strategic alignment process, but Andrew had contributed significant creative elements. If he'd claimed ownership of the entire campaign— "There's more," Thomas continued. "According to my sources at other agencies, Andrew's been shopping information about our client list, contract details, and strategic methodologies. He's essentially selling everything he learned during his time here." Lauren looked physically ill. "Can he do that?" "If his employment contract wasn't properly structured, yes," I said, already thinking through the legal implications. "Thomas, do we have strong non-compete and confidentiality agreements with all senior staff?" Thomas winced. "That's part of the problem. Lauren's been so focused on creating a casual, creative culture that she's been relaxed about legal formalities." "What does that mean?" "Exactly. She instructed HR to stop enforcing the non-compete clauses because they seemed restrictive and corporate," Thomas explained. "She wanted people to feel trusted and valued, not micromanaged by legal documents." I closed my eyes, feeling the magnitude of the disaster settling over me like a lead blanket. Without enforceable non-compete agreements, Andrew could freely share proprietary information with competitors. Without strict confidentiality protocols, client details and strategic processes were essentially public domain. "How many other senior staff members are vulnerable to recruitment?" I asked. "All of them," Thomas replied bluntly. "Sarah Jensen's already fielded 3 offers this week. Marcus Chen from Digital Strategy has a second interview with Meridian tomorrow. Even Emily Rodriguez from accounting is updating her LinkedIn profile." Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "How could this happen so quickly?" "Because the company's reputation is built on relationships and expertise," I explained, surprised by how detached my voice sounded. "When the relationships are damaged and the expertise walks out the door, there's nothing left but overhead and legal liability." Lauren had been silent throughout this exchange, but now she spoke up in a small voice. "There's something else, something I haven't told you." We all turned to her, dreading what new catastrophe she might reveal. After the Reynolds meeting, I got desperate. I reached out to some lifestyle and fashion brands, trying to replace the lost revenue quickly. I may have overstated our capabilities in those markets." "What kind of overstating?" I asked carefully. I sent portfolio samples from our B2B work and claimed they were lifestyle campaigns. I told potential clients we had extensive experience with influencer marketing and social media strategy, which isn't exactly true. Thomas finished for her. "It isn't true at all." Lauren nodded miserably. 3 companies have already sent contracts based on those representations. If we can't deliver what I promised, we'll be facing additional lawsuits for false advertising and breach of contract, I concluded. "Thomas, what's our legal exposure looking like overall?" Thomas consulted his notes. "Potentially catastrophic. The Apex lawsuit alone could bankrupt us if they win. Add in possible claims from the lifestyle brands Lauren contacted. Plus, the standard liability from losing major clients. We're looking at potential damages in the 8-figure range." "But surely we have insurance for this kind of thing," Mom asked hopefully. "Professional liability insurance typically excludes claims related to fraudulent misrepresentation," I said. "If Lauren knowingly overstated our capabilities, the insurance company will probably deny coverage." The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Lauren's quiet sobbing. "How long do we have?" Dad asked finally. "The Apex lawsuit requires a response within 30 days, Thomas replied. "But the real timeline is much shorter. Word is spreading through the industry about Reynolds leaving and staff departing. Other clients are going to start jumping ship soon if they haven't already." "What about payroll? We can make next week's payroll, barely. After that," Thomas shrugged helplessly. "Without major contract renewals or new business, we're looking at layoffs within 2 weeks, full closure within 6 weeks. I felt a familiar weight settling on my shoulders, the responsibility for 38 families whose livelihoods hung in the balance. These weren't just employees, they were people I'd worked alongside for years, people who'd trusted me to help build something stable and lasting. "There is one possibility," Thomas said quietly, looking directly at me. "Martin Reynolds called this morning. He heard about the Apex lawsuit and wanted to know if you were coming back." "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know, but he said something interesting. He said if you returned with full authority to restore the company's strategic direction, Reynolds Enterprises would consider not just renewing their contract but expanding it." Dad's head snapped up. "Expanding it how? Their Asian market expansion is moving forward regardless of which agency they use," Thomas explained. "Martin said if he could work with Stephanie again, he'd prefer to keep everything under one roof. We're talking about a potential $12 to $15 million annual contract." The number hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to drowning sailors. "But that's contingent on Stephanie returning," Thomas continued. "And Martin was very specific he wants to work with Stephanie Wilson, not Wilson Strategic Marketing. The relationship is personal, built on years of trust and proven results." I felt all eyes in the room turning to me, carrying the weight of desperate hope and unspoken expectation. "He also said something else," Thomas added. "He said Andrew Michaels contacted Reynolds Enterprises yesterday, claiming to represent Apex in pursuing their account. Martin told him that Reynolds Enterprises doesn't work with agencies that employ proven liars and thieves." A spark of possibility flickered in my mind. If Andrew had overreached in his attempts to poach clients, if Martin was willing to publicly denounce his credibility, "Thomas, I need you to document everything about Andrew's departure. Every conversation, every file he accessed, every claim he's made about proprietary ownership. If we're going to fight the Apex lawsuit, we need to prove that Andrew's the one engaged in theft, not us." "You're thinking about coming back?" Dad asked, not quite daring to hope. I looked around the room at Dad's desperate face, Mom's tear-stained cheeks, Lauren's devastated expression, and Thomas's professional optimism fighting against personal loyalty. "I'm thinking about whether it's possible to save this company," I corrected. "But if I do come back, It won't be as an employee trying to clean up someone else's mess.
It'll be as an owner with the authority to make the decisions necessary for survival. The words carried more weight than I'd intended, but they felt right. After years of building other people's dreams, maybe it was time to claim my own. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of phone calls, legal consultations, and brutal honesty. I spent Tuesday morning with Eleanor Thompson, explaining why I needed to postpone our partnership discussions. Family businesses, Eleanor said, with the wisdom of someone who'd navigated similar waters, have layers of complexity that outsiders can never fully understand. You need to follow your instincts on this one. My instincts are telling me to walk away and let them suffer the consequences of their decisions, I admitted. But my conscience is telling me that 38 innocent people don't deserve to lose their jobs because of family dysfunction. And your business sense. I'd been thinking about that question all night.
My business sense says this could be an opportunity to finally get what I should have had all along: control of a company I helped build, on terms that recognize my actual value. Eleanor smiled. Then trust your business sense, but be absolutely clear about your terms before you commit to anything. Tuesday afternoon, I met with Martin Reynolds at his downtown office. The conversation was frank and illuminating. I've been watching Wilson Strategic's trajectory for 15 years, Martin said, pouring coffee from an expensive machine. The company I originally hired was competent, but unremarkable. The company that emerged under your leadership became exceptional. Thank you, but I'm not finished. Martin interrupted gently. In my experience, exceptional performance comes from exceptional people, not exceptional companies. When exceptional people leave, what remains is usually just overhead and historical reputation. His message was clear. Reynolds Enterprises had been working with me, not Wilson Strategic Marketing. If you were to return with genuine authority, not as a consultant or employee, but as the controlling owner, Reynolds would not only renew our contract, but expand it significantly. How significantly? $15 million annually, guaranteed for 3 years, with performance bonuses that could push it closer to $20 million. Martin leaned forward. But I want ironclad assurance that you're in control. No family interference, no second-guessing from well-meaning relatives who don't understand the business. The number was staggering, more than the company's entire current revenue, from a single client relationship I'd spent 8 years building. There's something else, Martin continued. Andrew Michaels approached me yesterday, claiming to represent Apex in a bid for our account. He suggested that Wilson Strategic's recent leadership transitions created an opportunity for more stable partnership with his new firm. What did you tell him? Martin's smile was predatory. I told him that Reynolds Enterprises doesn't do business with people who steal from their former employers. Word travels fast in this industry. Stephanie, Andrew's reputation is already suffering, which should help with your legal situation. That evening, I called Lauren. We met at a coffee shop near her apartment, neutral territory where we could speak freely without parental oversight. I've been thinking about what you said, Lauren began before I could speak. About not wanting this opportunity. I meant it. Every day since you left has been a nightmare. Tell me about the lifestyle brands, I said gently. What exactly did you promise them? Lauren pulled out her phone and showed me the emails she'd sent. As I read through them, my heart sank. She hadn't just overstated Wilson Strategic's capabilities, she'd essentially invented an entirely fictional service portfolio. Lauren, these promises would require us to build an entirely new department with specialized staff we don't have. I know that now, she said miserably. I was panicking about lost revenue, and Thomas kept pushing me to think bigger and expand our market reach. I thought if I could land a few big lifestyle accounts, it would prove I could generate business too. Have any of them signed contracts yet? 2 of them, Trend Style Collective and Urban Bloom Cosmetics. Together they're worth about $4 million annually, but But we can't deliver what you've promised without massive upfront investment in new talent and resources. Lauren nodded. I've made everything worse, haven't I? I studied my sister's face, seeing genuine remorse and fear. For the first time since the inheritance announcement, I felt sympathy rather than anger toward her. Lauren, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. If there was a way to save the company, to keep everyone employed and preserve what Dad built, would you be willing to step aside completely? You mean give up ownership? I mean recognize that you were never suited for this role and let someone qualified take over before more damage is done. Lauren was quiet for a long moment, staring into her untouched latte. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be grateful to give up a multi-million-dollar company, I'd have thought they were crazy, she said finally. But being responsible for something you don't understand, knowing that people's livelihoods depend on decisions you're not qualified to make, it's the worst feeling in the world. So that's a yes. That's a yes. But Stephanie, I need you to understand something. I never wanted to take anything away from you. I just wanted to prove I could be valuable to this family too.
You are valuable, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Just not in this role. There are things you're genuinely good at: community relations, creative communication, building personal connections. Those are real skills. Just not CEO skills. Just not CEO skills, I agreed. Any more than I'd be good at teaching or gallery curation or freelance writing. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching evening commuters hurry past the window. If you do this, Lauren said quietly, if you save the company, what happens to me? We figure out a role that uses your actual strengths, I said. Community relations, special events, charitable partnerships, things that matter but don't require strategic business management. And I'd work for you. You'd work for the company. I'd be CEO. But we'd structure things so you have autonomy in your areas of responsibility. Lauren nodded slowly. I think I'd like that better than what I've been trying to do. Then we have an understanding. Now I need to go negotiate with Dad. Wednesday morning, I called a family meeting in the conference room at Wilson Strategic Neutral Territory, where the stakes would be impossible to ignore. Dad arrived first, looking haggard but determined. Mom followed, clutching Lauren's hand like a lifeline. Lauren herself appeared surprisingly calm, as if our conversation had lifted a weight from her shoulders. I'd spent the previous evening with my attorney, structuring an offer that would protect both my interests and the company's future. Now it was time to present it. Before we begin, I said, placing a folder on the conference table, I want everyone to understand that this isn't a family discussion. This is a business negotiation about ownership, control, and survival. Dad nodded grimly. We understand. Good. Here are my terms, non-negotiable and final. I opened the folder and distributed copies of the ownership restructuring proposal. First, I require 60% controlling ownership of Wilson Strategic Marketing. Not 51%, 60%. This ensures that even if you two combine your votes, I maintain final decision-making authority. Mom's sharp intake of breath was audible, but Dad simply nodded. Second, Lauren transitions immediately to a non-executive role as Director of Community Relations, retaining 15% ownership but no operational authority whatsoever. Lauren looked relieved rather than insulted. Third, you and Mom retain 25% collectively, with board positions and regular updates, but zero involvement in day-to-day management. That leaves us with less than we'd planned to give Lauren. Dad observed. Yes, because Lauren didn't nearly destroy the company through incompetence. You both did that by putting her in a position she wasn't qualified for. The barb landed as intended. Dad winced visibly. Fourth,
We establish a formal board structure with 2 independent advisors, industry professionals with no family connections. Major strategic decisions require board approval, creating checks and balances for everyone, including me. And if we refuse these terms, Dad asked quietly, then I wish you the best of luck. I already have a partnership offer from Eleanor Thompson's firm. Based on current trajectory, Wilson Strategic will need to liquidate within 6 weeks. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. There's one more thing, I continued. We're facing immediate legal crisis that requires action within 48 hours. The Apex lawsuit, the lifestyle brand contracts Lauren signed, the staff retention issues, all of this needs professional management starting now, not next week. I pulled out my phone and showed them Martin Reynolds' text message. $15 million guaranteed, 3-year contract if Stephanie has full authority by Friday. Offer expires Monday. Reynolds Enterprises is willing to expand their contract to $15 million annually, but only if I'm in control by Friday. Without that revenue, the legal problems become academic because there won't be a company left to sue. Mom finally spoke up. What about family relationships? How do we heal those? It was the question I'd been dreading most. That's separate from business terms, I replied carefully. It will take time and new patterns of respect on all sides. I'm willing to try if you are, but family healing can't be contingent on business decisions. After a long moment, Dad cleared his throat. I need to say something, he began, his voice shaky. I grew up in an era when family businesses passed to sons, or to daughters who married well. When your grandfather handed his plumbing supply business to my brother instead of me, I accepted it without question, even though I'd worked there since high school and David had never shown interest. That's just how things were done. He looked directly at me. I perpetuated that thinking without examining it. In doing so, I nearly destroyed everything I built and deeply hurt my most capable child. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. But I want you to know that I recognize the injustice now, and I'm proud of the leader you've become despite my failures. It was more self-awareness than I'd expected from him. We accept your terms, he continued. All of them. Have your lawyer draft the necessary paperwork, and we'll sign whatever you need. 1 week, I specified. All documentation finalized within 1 week, or I move on to other opportunities. Understood. Lauren reached across the table and touched my arm lightly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I thought I was taking an opportunity, not taking something from you. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of the harm done, but it was a start. Community relations actually does sound more my speed, she added with a weak smile, especially if it means never having to look at another financial projection. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tension between us begin to ease. That afternoon, I placed 3 crucial calls. First, to Martin Reynolds, confirming that I would have controlling ownership by Friday and could guarantee the strategic continuity he required. Second, to Thomas Grant, offering him the COO position with a significant raise and equity stake if he'd stay to help stabilize operations. Third, to Andrew Michael's attorney, delivering a countersuit for theft of intellectual property and breach of fiduciary duty. By Thursday, word had spread through the industry that I was returning to Wilson Strategic as majority owner. 2 of the senior staff members who'd been interviewing elsewhere called to withdraw their applications. Sarah Jensen canceled her interview with Meridian. Even Marcus Chen expressed interest in staying if the company culture returned to its previous professionalism. Friday morning, we signed the ownership transfer documents in the presence of both legal teams. By Friday afternoon, I was officially the controlling owner of Wilson Strategic Marketing. My first executive decision was to call an all-hands meeting. I know the past 3 weeks have been chaotic and stressful. I told the assembled staff, I'm here to restore stability and strategic focus to this company. We're returning to the proven methodologies and professional standards that built our reputation. The relief in the room was palpable. That said, we're also facing serious challenges. The Apex lawsuit, client retention concerns, and resource allocation issues all require immediate attention. I need everyone's commitment to working through these problems together. Thomas Grant raised his hand. What about the lifestyle brand contracts Lauren signed? We're going to honor them, I said, surprising even myself. But we're restructuring them as partnerships with specialized external vendors. Wilson Strategic will manage strategy and coordination while partners handle execution.